Well, once again, welcome, church, to the last letter in the book of Revelation. As we've been journeying this really interesting group of letters to the churches. And every one of these churches kind of has their own personality, their own kind of things that they're addressed or that Apostle John addresses with them. And the church at Laodicea, this has got to be one of my favorite texts ever. And I'll tell you why. Because it is so rich in the... It exemplifies the value of good hermeneutics. And what I mean by that is this is a really, really deep text. And this is the one that often actually gets mistranslated a little bit. But once you dig into it and understand the context of it, it actually becomes alive. And it's kind of like going from a black and white TV to a color TV. It just gets become brilliant. So this is a really exciting one. I was actually looking forward to preaching this one. I was hoping I'd get to preach on this one. And Danielle was gracious enough to let me do it. So thank you, Danielle, for allowing me to do that. Good timing on your part. Okay, so with that said, it is a good text. I'm grateful you're here. And I want to bring you back to 1477. You can imagine being there when back, 300-400 years ago. And there was a pope by the name of Pope Sixtus IV, and he had a chapel. And he thought the chapel looked a little bit bare. So he got a group of painters together and said, hey, could you spruce this thing up a little bit? Kind of like what we're doing here. Could you spruce this thing up? So a bunch of painters show up. And it started out back in 1740 or 1477, went on for a couple of years. Then after that, he wasn't really satisfied. They did some of the work, and then he said, well, we need some more work done at kind of the ceiling and behind the altar. And so he got another painter by the name of Michelangelo to come out and kind of help him out with this project. The project is what's known as the Sistine Chapel. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful works of art. I mean, it is world-renowned, the beauty of the Sistine Chapel. The problem is we have only had light bulbs in the last 100 years, give or take. So until then, if you wanted to see the Sistine Chapel, you would light a candle and you'd walk through it. And so over the period of 300 and 400 years, there started to build up a residue on the Sistine Chapel. This beautiful ceiling, all the smoke would rise and create this waxy, sooty residue. And so in 1980, the Vatican and a Japanese TV network, why them? I don't know. They didn't want the exclusive rights to filming it. I don't get it. But nonetheless, they forked out a ton of money to bring restoration back to this work of art, or back to this Sistine Chapel. And what was amazing is what started to come to the forefront. This is the prophet Jeremiah, but it gives you an understanding of what it looked like before and what it looked like after. As they start to painstakingly remove all that soot, all of a sudden it got brilliance and life and detail. And it would just start to become alive. Beautiful frescoes now expose what we didn't see before. In fact, there's even pieces of it where people had painted over top of it, so you can now see the original art as had been done by Michelangelo and his fellow artists. And this is the chastising that Jesus gives this church. Man, when I painted you, when I formed you, when I shaped you, you were beautiful and brilliant. There's detail and you're amazing to look at. But Church of Laodicea, you become dull. The waxy soot over the years has actually dulled you out, and the detail has been missed. And what I had for you, the brilliance I had for you is all but lost at this point. I mean, you look at this picture, the contrast. So church, this morning, as we look at the Church of Laodicea, we're gonna look at ourselves and say, Jesus, what would you bring to the forefront that you may be honored and glorified? So Jesus, thank you for this morning, for the people that I get to serve with. Serve your kingdom, your purpose. And Lord, as your text this morning speaks to your church in Laodicea, Lord, let it speak to us as well. Lord, would you be made known? Would you be honored? Would you be made famous? We are your church. And Lord, we are so grateful that we get to show your light. Lord, would you shape and mold us to do that well? your name. Amen. Amen. Okay, this morning, there's 3 headings. First, it's the gag reflex. We're gonna talk about the gag reflex. Secondly, we're gonna talk about the reset. And then finally, we're gonna talk about the feast. So the gag reflex. I'm sure you picked up on it. First and foremost, to set this thing up a little bit, I want to position Laodicea a little bit because geography matters. You see, in this context of Laodicea, Jesus and the Spirit through John is speaking to the church in context of what they know. So most likely, if Jesus were to write a letter to KUC today, he would probably use things like, I don't know, Starbucks or highways or cars. Like they're using context of what they know. And so you have to put yourself in the position of the church in Laodicea. So the church in Laodicea was centered right around there, okay, at the very bottom. It's the last of the letters. But it was surrounded by 2 very important cities. The first city was 6 miles north of Laodicea was called Hierapolis. Okay, now Hierapolis, just a bit north, and Hierapolis was known for the hot springs. 95-degree hot springs, cooking hot. Who has a hot tub here? Don't put your hot tub. If anyone has a hot tub here, they would know 95 degrees is really, really hot. Okay, these are beautiful hot springs, and so it was known. Let's put it that way. Hierapolis was known for this hot spring kind of center. Think like Sparkling Hill. Some of you would be familiar with Sparkling Hill. Some of us, our staff, really love Sparkling Hill. Like Sparkling Hill is like the place you go to for healing. You would go to Hierapolis for healing. You would sit in the baths, and whatever ails you, whatever your feet were sore from walking, you were sick, you had aches and pains, you would most likely find yourself at Hierapolis. Okay, so it was kind of known as a center of healing. Just south of Laodicea was a place called Colossia. And that's the same church where the letter of Colossians was written to. It's Colossia. And Colossia was just on the edge of a mountain, a massive mountain that, get this, always had snow at the top of it. And so Colossia was always known for having these fresh springs come down from the mountain. So throughout the year, you have a dozen up to 100 springs of fresh, cold, refreshing water run down this mountain. Hundreds of them. It was known for their refreshing water. So what was Laodicea known for? Well, Laodicea was a wealthy city, known for their economy. There's a couple key things that stood out for Laodicea. First was their black wool. They had this unique black wool found in Laodicea, which made it very, very wealthy. Okay, it was a very wealthy, wealthy city. Secondly, it also had eye salve. And so Laodicea had developed in their medicine, I don't know how and where and what, but somehow they had developed this salve that if you had aches in your eyes or in your ears, you would go to Laodicea because there would be produced that salve. Okay. And yet here's what Jesus says. To the church of Laodicea, right? I know your deeds. You are neither hot nor cold. You are neither hot nor cold. Often this verse is translated to say, like, you are neither for me nor against me, and therefore I spit you out of my mouth. But that's actually some commentators still would argue that as an interpretation of the text. But let's think back to Hierapolis. What was Hierapolis known for? The hot, soothing baths. What was Colossia known for? The refreshing springs. But what happens when you bring those 2 things together? You're neither hot nor cold, you become useless. What God is saying, he's not saying before me or against me, that don't be complacent. What God's actually arguing here is saying, look, Laodicea, you are neither hot, you are neither soothing, and you are neither helpful, nor are you refreshing and uplifting. And because you are neither, I'm going to vomit the word. The actual word is vomit out of my mouth. Emo. I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. So growing up, I feel so sorry for my parents. Because traveling with me was terrible. Now, we lived in Holland, and conversing Holland was all of a 2-hour jaunt, maybe 3 hours. But guaranteed when we would take road trips, this kid couldn't hold together. Not at all. It was so bad that they went to the doctor and said, "Doctor, we need help." So the doctor's like, "I got a solution for you. Let's take out his tonsils." Mom and dad are like, "Yeah, let's do it." So, got my tonsils removed. Problem was, and I'm not joking, the problem was they grew back. I am not a starfish, and I'm not joking when I say that, but somehow these things grew back. So guess what? I get round 2. Still didn't help. And I was bad. We would go for a half-hour trip, and it was not good. So finally, well, let's take out the adenoids, see if that helps. So I had my third surgery and took out my adenoids. So that was my childhood growing up. I started to learn to drive pretty quick after that, and I was fine. The problem was we went on a road trip the other day with my friends, the Hearns, and we drove down to Whistler for a retreat. I wasn't driving. So on the way down, I'm like, "Yeah, this is great. I'll just hold together." The problem was on the way back, I had a hearty breakfast. And all I can say is that the worst investment of a breakfast I've ever made. As I'm on my way back, and I'm driving with Dave, and Dave, I start to become quieter and quieter, and I start looking forward, and my face gets white, and I get pale, and we go stop, and they're all looking at this beautiful lake, and I go find a bush somewhere. And I'm like, this is the worst experience of my life. But as this is happening, my body is angry with me. My body is angry. It is every muscle is get it out. I will vomit you out of my mouth. This is what Jesus is saying. He's not like, "I detest it, I would rather not." He's like, "I will spit you out of my mouth. I will vomit you. I will get this out of you. I cannot stand it. I cannot stand it." Why? Why can't he stand it? Carry on. We'll get back to this. Because you are lukewarm. You are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold. I'm spit you out of my mouth. Because you say, "I am rich and have acquired wealth." See, that's the problem. The spitting out of the mouth is just the symptom. That's actually the symptom of the actual problem, which is that you have acquired too much wealth and you don't need a thing. In 60, we've talked about this a few times in the other text. Around 60 AD, there was a massive earthquake. We've talked about that. And this earthquake annihilated, it was an 8-point Richter scale. So it was a massive earthquake that affected all these towns. This town was so rich that when the Roman government came along and said, "Hey, we want to help you rebuild because you're so rich, we want to make sure you have commerce and you can feed our coffers," you know what they said? "No, thanks. We have enough money. We don't need government subsidy. Thank you very much." That's how rich these people were. They had it made. And because you're so rich, he says, you're materially prosperous and you become prideful and lukewarm and alienated from God. Do you not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked? The very things that they pride themselves in. You're blind, the eye salve. You're poor, the gold exchange. You are naked, the black wool. What he's doing is everything that you think you have built up means nothing. You think you have it made, and you have no clue. Self-reliance in our own achievements, in our own accomplishments. The emperor has no clothes, walks around the village. Everyone's cheering him on. We've got it made. We're doing good. And really, on the inside, everybody knows it's a falsehood. You and I both know the reality that the argument the West is giving us is actually an emperor has no clothes. It's not fulfilling the wealth we gain. The self-reliance, the assurance. So the question is, are you cold water? Are you refreshing to people? Uplifting, encouraging? Are you hot water, where you're warm and soothing and you give counsel and you support and you help? You see, it's an indicator. Because if you're not, there's something wrong, and most likely that is what's wrong, is that you're self-assured on your own accomplishments and your own achievements. Okay, it's ridiculous. So back in like 1800s, they didn't have Rolexes. But if you want to like flex your wealth, right? Like, people show up in like a Maserati or Rolex or, whatever. Like, people that kind of show off, like people who always are. If you want to flex in the 1800s and you were a farmer, no joke, this is how you would do it. You would commission a painting of your livestock looking like that. I am so wealthy, this is what my sheep looks like. Can I tell you, I wouldn't touch that sheep with a 10-foot pole. I don't know what GMO is in that thing, but I don't want to get near it. It looks like it's a Chernobyl side effect. It's ridiculous. We're all laughing because that looks stupid. That's 1800s. That was 200 years ago. So 200 years from now, what pastor is going to put up a picture of what we do today? What pastor 200 years from now is going to put up the exact same picture and you're going to have the whole congregation laughing? Because it's just as ridiculous. The wealth, the social media following you have. Someday someone's going to laugh at that. And yet you put so much time and effort and pride into it. Don't do that. It looks ridiculous. But you'll never look at a sheep ever the same way again. Here's a stern warning for the church. You are self-reliant. And I know you're self-reliant because you are neither hot nor cold. Let's carry on, church. Okay, the reset. So we got the gag reflex. You got context. You know something about my childhood now. Now what's he do? What's Jesus say? Well, Jesus does a bit of a reset. I counsel you to buy from me gold refined as fire so you can become rich and white clothes to wear. Okay, now there's a lot that can be unpacked here, and it's beautifully rich as we talk about white and revelation and the purity and all that. So it's beautiful. But what essentially is happening here is that God is changing what is valuable to them. He's reorienting, he's resetting what their priorities should be. So he's like, you are neither hot nor cold, and it's because you're selfish. Now let me show you something different about who you are as a child, as my child. Don't build your identity in the things that you can accumulate, rather in the things that I give you. Because notice, he gives. There's an exchange here, but we don't pay for anything. And so what he's saying is, take your identity in what I can give you and who you are. I want to take you really quickly to Matthew. Not Matthew, sorry. I want to take you to John. And John 14, verses 17. No, let's go to 18. So in verse 17, he's talking about the Spirit coming down. As when Jesus leaves, the Spirit coming and giving comfort. But here's what he says in verse 18. And it's a really key verse, and it's been a really deep verse for me in the last couple months. I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. I will not leave you as orphans. We, you, me, as followers of Jesus, are children of God. But what we naturally tend to do is to go back to our orphan behavior, fatherless behavior, fear, hogging, accumulating, self-assurance. I watched a movie the other day. It comes from a book. It's called The Children of Windermere. And these are young men, I believe just young men, coming out of Auschwitz for the first time, okay? And they're in a camp to help them reintegrate back into the world. And it's a really powerful scene. It's probably the scene I remember the most in that movie. You have all these boys who are gathered in the dining hall, sitting around the table, and they're just not sure what's going on. And all of a sudden, the directors of the camp put bowls of bread on the middle of the table. And you can see the anxiety growing, and they're just tensing up, and they're praying. And as soon as they prayed, every single child grabbed the bread, clutched it, ran back to their bedroom, hid it under the pillow or hid it under their bed, and sat in a corner and started eating it. Not realizing how they just sat there and waited, the meal would have come. There would have been so much more. But what they do, they clutched it, they grabbed it, they ran, they hid, and they ate. That's orphan behavior. Jack Frost has a really beautiful quote, and I think it's just beautiful. The orphan spirit causes one to live a life as if he does not have a safe and secure place in the Father's heart. He feels he has no place of affirmation, protection, comfort, belonging, or affection. Self-oriented, lonely, and inwardly isolated, he has no one from whom he draw godly inheritance. Therefore, he has to strive, achieve, compete, and earn everything he gets in life. It easily leads to a life of anxiety, fears, and frustration. Anxiety, fears, and frustration. Now, before you get too quickly and say, I know I'm a child of God and that's not me, Jack Frost puts together a really helpful chart. This is a condensed version of it. And this is the one that's been really powerful in my own journey in the last couple months. What does it mean to be the heart of an orphan, to have the heart of an orphan? Or what does it mean to have the heart of sonship and daughtership? What does it mean? That I have to appease, need to perform, follow the rules. I have a love for the law rather than a law of love. Image of God. A dependency, which is a self-reliance, rather than helping we carry one another's burdens, as Galatians tells us. Is it security? There's no peace. Strive for the approval of man. That's the motive for our service. Or do we do it because Jesus asked us to do it? All of us fit into this somewhere. If you're interested, I can give you the full one online. But it's a really good self-audit for us. As we think about, how is my relationship with God? Am I a child of God, or am I seeing myself as an orphan, clutching to whatever I can to prop myself up? Whatever I can do to make myself look better. You ever meet those people where you tell them a story and they always got to like me monster you on top of them? Right? Ryan Regan talks about the me monster. And the idea, like you tell a story and all of a sudden someone's like, yeah, but me. Yeah, but me. It's like, yeah, but me. And then you always got like the me monster, the guy who always has a one-upper on you. Church, all of us do it in some degree. And what Jesus is asking of us is to not see ourselves as an orphan clutching to whatever we can to validate ourselves, but rather what he's saying is, you are my daughter. You are my son. And that's good enough. That is your identity. Not the gold, not the black wool, not the eye salve or the wealth or whatever you've accumulated. Rather, I give you gold that lasts. So God has been so gracious to this church. He's been very harsh on them, telling them that he's going to spit them out. Told them the problem. He's kind of reset what their image of themselves is. And then he gets the solution. He works his way back. Talks about the feast. Here I am, stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person, and they will eat with me. What's interesting is this verse often will get used for unbelieving people. It was like stand at the door and knock, which like theologically is correct. Jesus does stand at the door and knock, but that's not this verse. Jesus is talking to a church, and he's saying, I am on the outside of your church. That means you can have church without Jesus. You can do church and do all the fancy woodwork and all the spin and all the music and all the lights and everything else. You can do all those things and still find Jesus on the outside of that door. That's a caution. That's a caution. There's a painting, I didn't want to bring up one more painting, but there was another painting from 1900s, and it's one that you would most likely be familiar with, but it's like the Jesus knocking on the door of a house. Some of you have seen that one. It's always interesting. There's no door handle on the outside. Isn't that interesting? Again, context matters. If you were in Laodicea and a Roman soldier was hungry and needed a place to stay, they could come to your house, knock on your door, and walk in. And what does Jesus say? I stand. I wait. I knock. I'm waiting for you to invite me in to hear my voice, to be attentive to the voice. Now, there's lots of beautiful unpacking exegetical work that can be done around this concept, but I would simply say this. I, in my personal life, have really found so much joy, and it's been a gift to spend mornings in silence. And to just say, Jesus, what would you say to me? And it's really hard. Like, it's really hard to do that sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I get up and I just wanna get going. I wanna get the coffee, get going, get to the meeting, get whatever I gotta do. But the moments I have taken the time to just sit, not read, not listen to anything, but just sit and bathe in silence, you'd be amazed what Jesus starts to say to you. And especially if you say, Jesus, what would you say to me? What would you say to me? It's a discipline, but it's beautiful. Now, the other part to listening is this. You cannot listen without obeying. Jesus is a Hebrew. So when he says listen, listening requires obedience. Louis Treverick says that we have not truly taken what we've heard into our hearts until it transforms our lives as well. So Jesus is saying, listen, hear my voice, and respond by opening the door. An invitation to come in. Doesn't force this way, but come in and eat with me. Do you know how big of a deal that is? For you to share a meal in that context is the greatest honor to share a meal. It is the most intimate of moments to share a meal. Fellowship. It's interesting that at the very beginning, he says, I will vomit you out of my mouth. And at this, which is like a full-bodied experience. And he ends the text by saying, and share a meal with me. You get the full-bodied experience of you and Jesus in relationship together. In an intimate, deep, abiding relationship as his children, as his son, as his daughter. In the joy of fellowship with him. That's what he's inviting you to. So he's chastising for not being hot and cold. But you notice what he doesn't say? Now go be hot and cold. Do you see what he's done? He says, you are not doing this. And the way to fix it is not to try and do that. The way to do it is to reorient what matters, who you are in me, and now have intimacy and relationship with me. And from that will flow your ability to be hot or cold. You see, if you just go be hot and cold, you're no different than the world. Because they can go do it themselves. But what you and I have is this deep, abiding relationship with Jesus that transforms and changes you and I. And when that is changed from the inside out, it will naturally lead to a posture of being hot or cold, to be soothing and nurturing and caring, or to be refreshing and encouragement, uplifting. So the litmus test is the hot and cold, but the solution is intimacy. But this gets in the way. Our need, our desire to cling to whatever it is that we prop ourselves up with. We live in a culture where we are self-made. We have a medical system and we have whatever we put our hands to, we can solve. That's our motto in the West. Give me a problem, I'll fix it. Put a man on the moon, I'll put a car into space. We can do whatever we want. And that's our problem. That's your problem. That's my problem. Is that we have an inherent ability to fix everything. And as a result, we do not and cannot rely on Jesus because we have a tremendous amount of wealth. There's no dependency on Jesus needed. So church, as we invite these wonderful people with us, welcome. So glad you're here. We're gonna watch and be led into a beautiful moment of baptism. Beautiful moment of baptism where this morning, or this service will be Bell, and there's 3 other ones in the other service. And in this moment, these people have changed their identity. They are new people, they're restored. They are not the same people they used to be. They are daughters and sons of God. And they've responded. They've responded by saying, yes, Jesus. And so with that, we're gonna watch them speak the gospel in the video.